I just counted 24 recalls by the Food and Drug Administration.
The parasite problem is not gone. You thought it was this lettuce at Taco Bell, but nope, there's 4 new outbreaks.
19 million eggs have been recalled because of salmonella concerns.
55,000 pounds of frozen blueberries are being recalled because they may be contaminated with listeria.
This goes far beyond lettuce. I want you to think about the last 5 things you ate. Do you know who made them? Do you trust them? And if something went wrong with that food, would that manufacturer know that you were one of the people who bought it? Because right now, at the time that I'm recording this, 4,173 people have been confirmed sick in a cyclospora outbreak connected to shredded iceberg lettuce. 308 people have been hospitalized. There's over 11,000 total suspected cases across 41 states with symptoms including nausea, vomiting, and explosive diarrhea. Last week, I told you the FDA had traced back through the supply chain, and that investigation converged on Taylor Farms de Mexico. Lettuce was removed and recalled from many, many Taco Bells, grocery stores, restaurants, and food service operations. But then the FDA announced that a lettuce sample had tested positive for cyclospora that had not been included in the initial testing and recall. And one day later, they walked back that test result. That's the part that I think is getting completely lost and is kind of muddying the waters. It doesn't erase the fact that approximately 90% of the sick people interviewed in Michigan reported eating iceberg lettuce, although it does kind of make you wonder about the other 10%. It doesn't erase the traceback investigation that converged on one supplier, and it didn't end the recall. So what evidence still stands, and why did so many people immediately interpret one corrected laboratory result as proof that the lettuce had nothing to do with the outbreak? To make matters worse, just as it seems like the investigators might be narrowing this down, the FDA announced another cyclospora investigation involving 72 people. The source hasn't been identified, and for the moment, they're claiming that it's unrelated to the other outbreak. But in reality, this goes far beyond lettuce. Earlier this year, almost 37 million pounds of frozen food were recalled because consumers found pieces of glass in the food. More than 735,000 Pillsbury rolls made for Walmart bakeries recalled because they too may contain glass. We have E. coli connected to organic frozen blueberries, a massive recall of over 19 million eggs with possible salmonella contamination, listeria connected to soft cheese, botulism being investigated in powdered infant formula, possible plastic contamination in fruit puree pouches. It's enough to make you ask, what in the world is going on with our food supply? Are we even safe? I don't think the food system is broken. I think in many ways, it's working exactly the way it was intended to work. It was built to move enormous amounts of food as quickly, as cheaply, and as efficiently as possible because that's where the profits come from. It was built around centralized manufacturers, giant distributors, private labels, and retail middlemen. And when everything goes right, that system gives us an incredible amount of food, variety, and convenience. Never in human history have so many people had access to such a variety and such volume of food. Everything is literally at our fingertips. But when something goes wrong, one contaminated ingredient can spread into millions of meals. One processing problem can affect several different brands, and one recall notice has to somehow travel back through that entire system to every single person who may already have that product inside their home. That's the problem. Couple this with fear of lawsuits and litigation. One thing missed by a small independent company could send them into bankruptcy, while the largest and most wealthy companies can afford to lawyer up and pay off the right people and buy up those smaller companies that can't afford to continue on. The biggest manufacturers out there are cutting corners. They're pushing the limits of what they can get away with, and it's working. That's exactly what we're seeing right now. It is a messy, messy system. But today, I want to show you what really happened with the cyclospora test and share the information that I've found. And I'm also diving into what the recall numbers actually show and which products you should still be checking inside your freezer, your pantry, and your refrigerator. But I also want to talk about something that several people have asked after last week's video. Can we do anything before we're exposed to cyclospora to support our immune system and our gut health? And are there any natural parasite remedies that actually work? And I want to talk about the gap between us and the companies that actually manufacture the things that we use, not just lettuce. This is about so much more than lettuce. I'm talking about our vitamins, our coffee, our shampoo, our cleaning supplies, all of those everyday products coming into our homes, because the deeper that you look into these recalls, the more you realize we've been brainwashed. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. If you're new here, welcome. This channel is about being prepared without panicking. We look at things that could affect our food, our families, and our ability to take care of ourselves. And then we talk about what we can realistically do to be prepared, because I don't believe that we should live in fear, but I also don't believe we should just blindly trust that somebody else has already checked everything for us. In the same way that I believe we should all be working towards self-sufficiency instead of waiting for some government agency to save the day. Before we get into this, I do need to say, of course, I am not a doctor, a scientist, or a food safety expert. Nothing in this video is medical advice. I'm just sharing official recall and outbreak information along with my own opinions and the decisions that I'm making for my household. And remember, recall information can change quickly, so always check the current FDA, USDA, and CDC information before making a decision about a specific product. With that out of the way, let's start with cyclospora. In last week's video, we talked about the growing number of cyclospora cases and the fact that investigators hadn't officially identified one source responsible for all of them at the time that I recorded that video. And that's still true to a certain extent. And if you haven't watched that video, be sure to check it out. The current investigation doesn't necessarily explain every cyclospora illness being reported across the country, but investigators have narrowed down one very large cluster. The illnesses included in this investigation began between May 13th and July 13th, 2026. The people involved reported eating at Taco Bell restaurants in Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and West Virginia. Michigan investigators looked more closely at what the sick people ate. Approximately 90% reported eating iceberg lettuce. 90%, that's obviously a pretty significant common denominator there. Investigators then followed the lettuce backward through the supply chain. The FDA says the traceback investigation converged on Taylor Farms de Mexico, which supplied the shredded iceberg lettuce used at the Taco Bell restaurants where people ate before becoming sick. Taylor Farms de Mexico removed iceberg lettuce sourced from central Mexico from the market, and they also recalled market-side iceberg salad and shredded lettuce sold at certain Walmart stores, along with lettuce supplied to several other stores, restaurants, and food service operations. Then came the test result. On July 18th, the FDA reported that one sample had tested positive for cyclospora. Naturally, that became the headline. The source was officially found, mystery solved, the lettuce tested positive, case closed. Except it wasn't. The next day, FDA laboratory experts re-examined that test result and concluded that it didn't represent a true positive. And I've seen people interpreting that update in two completely opposite ways. Some people are saying, see, the lettuce was never contaminated. And then other people are acting as though the corrected result means absolutely nothing. And neither one of these positions is completely accurate. To make matters worse, Taylor Farms put their own spin on this news and released this statement. And it began circulating around social media.
Well, this Taylor Farms story just keeps getting stranger and stranger. After Taylor Farms released this very deceptive graphic saying that the FDA apologized to them in regards to the confirmed positive test of their lettuce for cyclospora, saying that it was a false positive, the FDA is now clarifying things a little bit. The FDA writes, to clarify, this false positive lab sample does not change the basis for the FDA's ongoing outbreak investigation or the overwhelming epidemiological data supporting the current voluntary recall by Taylor Farms. Over the weekend, FDA alerted Taylor Farms that a new sample of shredded lettuce from Taylor Farms de Mexico tested positive for cyclospora during import examination at the southern border. This ended up being a false positive, and Taylor Farms was alerted to the corrective test on Sunday. FDA's traceback investigation and outbreak data continue to converge on shredded iceberg lettuce from Taylor Farms locations in central Mexico.
So Taylor Farms put out a statement saying that the FDA has issued them an apology after a false positive test result. And I need to address this directly because that framing is very misleading and people deserve to know the full picture. Here is exactly what happened. During a routine import check, the FDA tested a completely separate Taylor Farms lettuce shipment, one that has nothing to do with the recall product and nothing to do with the current outbreak investigation. That separate sample initially tested positive for cyclospora. The FDA re-reviewed it and concluded it was a false positive. Taylor Farms then put out a statement implying the FDA apologized and that this clears them of any connection to the outbreak. This, in fact, is not what happened.
From what we're seeing, I think it's safe to say that the companies and government agencies involved are just hoping this disappears from the news cycle at this point. They're looking out for their own best interests, not ours. But the traceback evidence has not suddenly disappeared. In all fairness, think about how difficult it would be to find the actual contaminated lettuce. Cyclospora usually doesn't make you sick immediately. It can take around a week or sometimes longer for symptoms to begin. Then the person has to seek medical care. The illness has to be reported. Investigators have to interview the person and reconstruct everything they ate. And then they have to trace those ingredients backwards through restaurants, through distributors, processors, growers. By that time, that handful of lettuce the person actually ate is long gone. The package is in the landfill. The restaurant may have used several more cases of lettuce. And then even inside one large batch, the contamination may not be spread out evenly. One handful could contain the parasite and the handful right next to it may not. So having no positive product sample doesn't automatically mean that no contamination ever existed. What we know is that 90% of the people interviewed ate iceberg lettuce. The supply chain converged on one supplier. The product was recalled. The FDA continues to describe the outbreak as linked to shredded iceberg lettuce, and there's currently no confirmed positive product sample. Then on July 22nd, the FDA added another cyclospora outbreak to its active investigation list.
The parasite problem is not gone. You thought it was this lettuce at Taco Bell, but nope, there's 4 new outbreaks, 72 people, but this time the FDA got smart and they're not going to tell us where they're at or who's got it. So it's roulette. Good luck eating out.
The source hasn't been identified and officials haven't publicly identified the states, the restaurants, or the foods involved. Again, are they just hoping it goes away? There's also another smaller cyclospora investigation where the food hasn't been identified. Investigators may eventually connect some of these cases and they may identify completely different foods. In fact, just today I saw reports that are linking some cases to parsley and cilantro. And some investigations might just end without a source ever being found. We simply don't know yet. What's been most interesting to me is that it sure feels like we've been having a lot of recalls lately. And it's not just me. A lot of folks have been saying the same thing. It seems like every other day, sometimes multiple times a day, some food or some product is being recalled.
19 million eggs have been recalled because of salmonella concerns.
These are being recalled due to the potential contamination with a coolant, like coolant from a machine that leaked into the packaging process. This next one is huge. This is Target recalling its Up and Up fragrance-free and fresh cucumber-scented baby wipes due to the potential of a bacterial contamination. The FDA is right now investigating an outbreak of listeria in certain soft cheeses. They're called Recreson soft ricotta cheeses. Here's the issue with this. They were manufactured by a company called Clover Hill Dairy, but the problem is a lot of these products were relabeled when they were distributed. There have been 7 hospitalizations and 1 death reported. Bottom line, if you have this cheese, throw it out.
If you take antihistamines for seasonal allergies, there's a pharmaceutical company called Rising Pharma Holdings, and they're recalling 4 lots of 5 milligram tablets of cetirizine hydrochloride.
More than 55,000 pounds of frozen blueberries are being recalled because they may be contaminated with listeria.
I just counted 24 recalls by the Food and Drug Administration. 24 in literally just the past 3 days. So either our food system is just really out of whack or they're just really on top of things. Regardless, the most concerning out of all of those recalls is this one here by California Dairies. They're recalling some of their products due to potential salmonella risk. And you may be thinking, well, this is powdered milk. I see that right there in black and white, and I don't drink powdered milk. Well, guess what? This actually is something you probably do have in your cabinets right now. That's because the FDA says the recall has spread beyond just the original products because that powdered milk was used as an ingredient and other foods, snack mixes, seasonings, flavored popcorn products, and other foods sold under a number of multiple brand names.
Right now, Walmart is recalling 2 types of its frozen pizzas because of concerns they could be contaminated with salmonella.
The recall includes the Great Value Stuffed Crust Chicken Bacon Ranch and Great Value's Thin and Crispy Crust Chicken Bacon Ranch. The pizzas have been linked to a potential salmonella outbreak in meat and poultry products made with a previously recalled dry milk powder.
We just had one of the biggest food recalls in the U.S. in over a decade. 37 million pounds of frozen food just got recalled for containing actual pieces of glass.
Are numbers actually on the rise, or are we just paying more attention to them? I went and pulled the actual numbers, not headlines, not social media posts, actual FDA and USDA recall data analyzed by a company called Sedgwick that tracks this stuff quarter by quarter. And here's what I found. The overall number of recalls in 2025 was still below the unusually high 905 that were recorded back in 2016. However, FDA-regulated food and beverage recalls reached 571 in 2025, the highest level for that particular measurement in 9 years, and 15.4% higher than in 2024. The scale of these recalls also grew dramatically. FDA recalls affected approximately 44.8 million units in 2024, climbing to 138.5 million units in 2025. This is a 209% increase in 1 year, meaning more than 3 times as many individual food products were recalled. The FDA recorded 140 food recall events in just the first 3 months of 2026. Same quarter last year, 127. And those 140 events this year affected approximately 57.4 million individual units of food. 57 of those recall events were for undeclared allergens, meaning something was in the food that wasn't on the label. 24 involved foreign materials, glass, metal, plastic, things that shouldn't be in food. 22 involved bacterial contamination. But things get even more interesting when you factor in the USDA, which oversees meat, poultry, and certain egg products. Counting FDA and USDA records together, recalls have increased more than 21% since 2021, with the most serious Class 1 recalls rising more than 36%, with the amount of food affected being more than triple than the previous year. A Class 1 recall is a situation where there's a reasonable probability that using or eating a product could cause serious health consequences or death. USDA recalls affected about 67.6 million pounds of meat, poultry, and other regulated food in 2025, the highest amount in 13 years. During the first quarter of 2026, there were only 6 recalls, but these 6 recalls involved 37.1 million pounds of food. That's roughly 87 times as much product as was recalled in the first quarter of 2025. That's not a rounding error. It's not a bad week. That's what happens when production is so centralized that one problem, one contaminated carrot in one facility doesn't stay in one product. It flows into everything that facility makes under every label they supply, and it gets shipped to every retailer in their network before anyone catches it. In February, Ajinomoto Foods North America recalled approximately 3.37 million pounds of frozen chicken fried rice after consumers reported finding glass in the food. Then the investigation expanded and expanded some more. By March 3rd, the recall included 36,987,575 pounds of frozen fried rice, ramen, and shumai dumplings. The product had been made between October 2024 and February 2026. Some have Best By dates stretching into 2027, and they were sold under several different names: Ajinomoto, Kroger, Ling Ling, Taipei, and Trader Joe's. The likely source of the glass was carrots that was used across those products. And that's how one contaminated ingredient stream becomes a 37 million pound recall. Think about what this feels like to the person shopping for dinner. You could buy Trader Joe's fried rice and believe you chose a Trader Joe's product. High standards, private label. You expect everything in that store to be safe, right? The branding creates the appearance of choice, but behind those packages, the food leads back to the same manufacturing system. The same thing's happening with the egg recall that was just announced. 19 million eggs came from the conglomerate Midwest Poultry Services, but they were sold under brands including Kroger, Brookshire's, Country Morning, Simple Truth, Sunups, and more. We don't often know where foods are coming from and who's handling them. But when results are issued and investigations are opened, we begin to get a glimpse behind the curtain. Only when something bad happens do we get transparency. This is why the lettuce recalled for cyclospora included not only Taylor Farms branded products, but also lettuce packaged and privately labeled for Walmart and Whole Foods and Target and Amazon Fresh, which, as we know now, is also the same lettuce used by Taco Bell and several other restaurants. Whole Foods 365 brand lettuce, which is 50 to 60% higher price than the identical product sold at Walmart. More proof that marketing can give us the illusion that we're making a choice. This is, unfortunately, how a huge portion of the consumer goods industry operates. I've talked about this many times. It's all about the illusion of choice. The Pillsbury roll recall gives us another example. General Mills recalled bulk Pillsbury hard roll and Kaiser roll dough that might contain glass. The amount represented more than 735,000 individual rolls, but these were not Pillsbury packages sitting in a freezer case with the doughboy on the front. The dough was supplied to Walmart in-store bakeries. Walmart employees baked it and sold the finished rolls through the bakery. So a customer could buy rolls from Walmart without having any idea that General Mills manufactured that dough. The customer interacted with Walmart. The product might have been inside Walmart bakery packaging, but Walmart didn't manufacture it, and General Mills has no direct record of which people actually eventually bought those finished rolls. And that's the gap that I'm talking about. The recall information has to travel from the manufacturer through the retailer, through the government, through the news, and eventually, hopefully, reach the consumer with hopes that they haven't already eaten that product. Eggs, blueberries, cheese, baby formula, lettuce. These are ordinary things that people brought home because they believed that the store, the label, and the food system had already done the worrying for them because it was in a nice package and sitting on the shelf at the store meant it could be trusted. Now, I want to be fair. The existence of a recall doesn't automatically prove that the entire food system's collapsing. In some cases, the recall is evidence that part of the system worked. Consumers complained, a lab found a problem, the product was removed. These are good things. I would much rather have dangerous products recalled than have nobody looking for problems at all. But a recall is not a force field. It's a reaction to something that's already happened. The product has already been produced. It's already entered the supply chain. It may even have already been eaten. And some outbreaks never result in a recall because investigators can't identify one exact product. And a lot of people never even hear about recalls because we're not buying directly from the manufacturers. The same distance exists with supplements, shampoo, toothpaste, cleaners, coffee, protein powder, almost every other product that we bring into our homes. Most of us are not going directly to the places that make these products. We're going to Walmart, Amazon, Target, Costco, some other retailer. The retailer becomes the company we interact with, but the retailer didn't formulate or manufacture the product. In some cases, your purchase can be connected to an online order or a loyalty account, but more often than not, the major retailers have no idea if the products that you purchased are included in a recall or not. When a recall notice gets posted somewhere, the news may cover it, and the consumer is expected to just happen across the information. But with the way algorithms work and the way the news media focuses on major stories and glosses over smaller ones, there's undoubtedly recalls that come and go without you, the consumer, ever knowing about them. All this has made me think a lot more carefully about the distance between my household and the company that actually makes the products that I bring into my home. Buying as directly from the manufacturer, producer, or farm as possible creates a shorter and clearer line of communication, and you're a lot more likely to be dealing with someone who cares if you're happy and healthy. When you purchase produce from a farm stand, that farm knows they need to offer quality or they're going to get a bad reputation around town. When you buy from independent stores, mom and pop places, family-owned restaurants, small businesses, maybe service is a little bit slower, or maybe the selection and the variety might be a little bit smaller at times, but you're dealing with a regular everyday person who's helping you instead of giving more money to the richest people in human history. For me personally, I buy local when I can. I support local businesses when possible. With that being said, some things are harder to source locally. Things like toothpaste and soap, shampoo, coffee, vitamins, and supplements. Things that I can't or don't have the time to make at home. I found a source that I trust a whole lot more than the mega corporations. They make the same types of products as Procter & Gamble and Johnson & Johnson and Unilever, but there's honestly no comparison in quality. When you browse their website, you know that everything is made in the USA, that it's safe, and that they're fully transparent about the ingredients that they're using. If you want to learn more about that and see if it might be a good fit for you and your family, like it has been for mine, I'll leave the link down below so that you can go check it out. I think simply knowing who actually makes the products that are coming into our house is a way to stay safe and feel good about where our money's going. This is the time where regular people like you and I, we need to be banding together and helping each other. We need to be looking out for each other because we're being shown time and time again, these big corporations are not going to look out for us. These big conglomerates, they don't have the same values as you and I, the same morals. Good, reputable companies are becoming harder and harder to find. That's why when I do find a business that values the same things that I do, things like personal relationships, faith, country, American workers, and doing right by the customers, I make a point of supporting it and I spread the word so other people can have the opportunity to support it as well. Because if we don't support these businesses, then who will? I've seen it happen time and time again. Before we know it, the smaller, values-driven companies will be gone, and the only choices left will be that same handful of giant corporations controlling what we buy, where it comes from, and where our money goes. Every purchase is a choice. It's a vote for the kind of companies we want to see survive, the kind of values we want to thrive. And when I find a company that treats people like customers and neighbors instead of numbers on a spreadsheet, that's the kind of company that I want my money helping keep in business. I'm spending the money on these products anyways. I'd much rather it goes to a business that shares my values and gives back to its people rather than buying some shareholder another yacht. In last week's video, I talked about how we can prepare in case we or someone in our household is affected by cyclospora. I talked about securing a supply of emergency antibiotics, including SMZ-TMP, which is the most effective treatment for cyclospora. If you want to learn a little bit more about why this antibiotic is effective against a parasite like cyclospora, check out that video. I will link it down below for you and at the end of this video. There's many reasons far beyond cyclospora why it is a good idea to have emergency antibiotics on hand. There are sometimes situations when antibiotics can mean a life or death difference, and large outbreaks or emergency situations can lead to unavailability of antibiotics. So having a backup supply is a good idea. But we get a ton of comments also from folks who are looking for alternatives and more natural remedies, and that is a good thing to think about as well. I think both are necessary for a truly complete and comprehensive emergency plan. I always believe in natural remedies and prevention first, and antibiotics as a last resort and a backup when all else fails plan. And the fact is that some people are allergic to Bactrim or SMZ-TMP, and the next available option is not as effective against cyclospora. So what about natural remedies? What about parasite cleanses? What about prevention? One of the best things that we can actually do for ourselves is to strengthen and bolster our immune system and our gut health. And those two are actually very closely tied together. So this really goes hand in hand. This is important all the time, but even more so in the face of an outbreak like this one. The reasons are twofold. A strong immune system and a healthy gut may help protect you against infections, but even more importantly, a healthy gut and a strong immune system can help you have a much better outcome if you do become infected or ill with something. And this is especially true with cyclospora. Most healthy people can fight and eventually pass and eradicate cyclospora on their own. It won't be pretty and it won't be pleasant. Many people have described this as the sickest they've ever been. And it can take weeks or even a month or more before it's finally out of your system.
I don't know if you've ever had a child, but it's worse than labor. I couldn't even barely get in the shower, but I wanted to. I had a total of 9 IVs. You don't lose weight like you think. So these people that are doing it to like lose weight, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. It doesn't work that way. Right now we don't have any deadly cases, but I can tell you this, I feel like I'm dying.
For someone who can't take Bactrim type antibiotics for one reason or another, or for people who would choose not to take an antibiotic for whatever reason, that's important knowledge. A healthy gut and a robust immune system are your best defense. That's the same reason why the people who are most susceptible to the effects of cyclospora are the very young and the very old, because of their underdeveloped or weakened immune systems and bodily reserves, and those folks whose immune systems are compromised for other reasons. So start by building and supporting your immune system. A healthy diet with a wide variety of proteins and fruits and vegetables to cover as many nutrients as possible. A good supplement to fill in the gaps, especially if your diet's not as great as it should be. But even for people who consciously eat very well, it can be really hard to cover all of the recommended nutrients with food alone. Get enough sleep. Sleep is so vital for our immunity and our overall health. Avoid smoking and other unhealthy habits. Cut out ultra-processed food as much as possible and get some sunshine and physical activity every day. And build your gut health. There is a lot we can do for this, and believe it or not, your gut health is really very closely tied into your overall immunity. There's plenty of other things that are linked to building a strong immune system. I'm going to show you some of the things that I personally use that I found work for me and for my family. Now remember, I'm not a doctor. I don't give medical advice. I just share what works for me, but you should always do your own research and decide what's best for you and your family. So these are just some of the things that we take. Vitamin packs, we take these AM and PM packs. The blue is actually the men's. This is Mr. Wicked Prepared. It was just what was closest to me, so I grabbed this. Mine are pink. We take these packs. They have the multivitamin that we take plus a lot of other supplements all kind of combined into one. These have a special technology that's patented, so they're much more absorbable, so it doesn't just get flushed out, but definitely important to fill all those nutritional gaps. Make sure you're getting complete your nutritional needs met to have a strong immune system. And then of course we also have extra supplements that are geared more just towards immunity. This like immune complex, you want to make sure it's got like vitamin C, D, and zinc. This one also has quercetin and beta glucan. This actually is included in our pack, but I also keep extra on hand if we want to double up or if somebody else needs to take some that doesn't take the packs. And another thing, colloidal silver. This is definitely very good for immunity. Colloidal silver is a really good thing to have on hand. Also oil of oregano. This one has black seed oil. This is good for so many things though. It's antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, anti-parasitic. This is good for so many things. You know, it's often referred to as nature's antibiotic. Oil of oregano, good thing to have on hand. For gut health, we take FiberWise. I take the plain FiberWise. This is just so amazing for gut health. This actually replaced a lot of different products that I was taking. So this has multiple sources of fiber. It has probiotics. It has botanical herbs that are meant to soothe the gut. So I take this every day. We take this every day. But they do have flavors. I just like to take the plain. Of course, probiotics. Definitely probiotics is important. These also actually come in our daily packs, our AM and PM pack. This is another one, berberine. So you might be surprised to see this here because this is usually thought of for like weight loss and blood sugar control and things like this. But they've actually found that this is really, really good at supporting your gut microbiome. So it can help get rid of the bad bacteria that we don't want in our gut, and it actually helps to feed and grow the good bacteria that we do want in our gut. So it does both of those things, and it actually also helps to heal leaky gut. So berberine is just amazing. So I've been taking this lately for both for the weight loss and blood sugar control and for the the gut sort of health benefits. And then of course fermented foods. So fermented foods, whether you ferment them yourself or you buy them, is a great thing to help with your gut health. These are some that I like. I get these from Azure Standard. I love this Wild Brine brand. If you don't have time to do it yourself all the time, or if you just you don't trust yourself to do it without, growing something you shouldn't be growing, just really good to have, fermented foods in your diet. And what about parasite cleanses? Now, I couldn't find evidence in the CDC or the FDA guidance showing that a natural parasite cleanse prevents or treats cyclospora, but I wasn't really expecting to. This is not the kind of thing that the powers that be want us to be using and doing, but I think we do need to take a look at traditional medicine and natural solutions. After all, what did our ancestors do for the hundreds or thousands of years before we had modern medicines and antibiotics? There's evidence of traditional cures going thousands of years back into history. Things like wormwood, black walnut hull, clove, garlic, neem, pumpkin seeds. Here's something that we need to remember. Even prescription medications that work against other parasites don't necessarily work against cyclospora. The CDC does list Bactrim or TMP-SMX as the treatment of choice. And several other drugs that people associate with parasites or intestinal infections don't appear to work against cyclospora. That should tell us something. A parasite isn't just simply a parasite. There's not a one-size-fits-all remedy. Different organisms respond to different treatments. But for some people, traditional, more natural treatments are a preferable first course of action. And many natural remedies are going to be less harmful to our bodies overall, or even have other benefits for our bodies as well as their intended purpose. I have a ParaCleanse product on the way to me right now that contains all of those traditional holistic naturopathic remedies like wormwood, black walnut hull, clove, and neem. And it also contains immune supporting minerals like zinc, selenium, and copper. I'll put a link down below for anyone who wants to check it out. But one important thing to remember is if you do a natural parasite cleanse, you also need to include a binder to flush out all of the die-off toxins so you don't reabsorb them into your body. My personal opinion is it cannot hurt, and it's definitely something that I want to have in my arsenal as well, even if we weren't dealing with an abnormally large cyclospora outbreak. And for myself and my family, I also like knowing that we have the emergency antibiotics on hand just in case. That's what we do, right? Backups for our backups, having every possible scenario covered just in case, because you never know. I would much rather have something and not need it than need it and not have it. Knowing I could have done something but I didn't is a terrible feeling that I think we're probably all familiar with. And keep in mind, none of this creates an indestructible shield. That's really not the goal. The goal here is to improve your starting position. Your immune system and your gut microbiome, they're not an impenetrable force field. They're part of your foundation. Now, lastly, don't forget about hydration. If you should get sick, the diarrhea caused by cyclospora can be severe. And when your body is losing that much fluid, you are not only losing water, but you're also losing sodium and potassium and other electrolytes that can really throw off a vital balance within your body. And this is the real danger of cyclospora infection and what could prove fatal in certain people without treatment. It's especially dangerous for young children, older adults, pregnant women, and people with underlying health conditions. So make sure your emergency supplies include well-packaged, reliable, bacteria-free bottled water in case the water supply gets contaminated. But it also needs to go beyond just water. Keep electrolytes or oral rehydration solution available. And make sure that it's not just trendy, casual electrolytes, but medically appropriate electrolytes with some sugars to activate the sodium glucose co-transporters in your body and help with that rehydration when electrolytes are dangerously low. Have these on hand, know where they are, and know how to mix them up. Don't wait until you or someone in your home is already severely sick to start reading the directions. If someone can't keep fluids down and becomes confused or extremely weak or dizzy or can barely urinate, get medical help. That is such a simple step, but it can become extremely important very quickly. So let's bring this down to a practical, actionable list. First, follow the recalls yourself. Since I released my video last week, I've had many of you sending me all kinds of info that's been spread around out there. My advice is don't depend on social media to eventually show you the right post. Signing up for official FDA and USDA alerts can definitely help. I'm going to leave the links to those in the description box below. I'm going to warn you though, it may scare you a little bit. I was shocked by the amount of emails I started getting, but it's pretty eye-opening to say the least. Second, use foods that have a longer shelf life and let pantry rotation protect you. Creating a stockpile isn't just a way to have food on hand for emergencies. It also gives you time to catch product recalls before you actually use the product. Now, obviously, this doesn't work well with things like lettuce, but for shelf-stable products and food that you can stock up on instead of using immediately, you create a buffer. Freeze-dried food is the perfect solution for fruits, vegetables, meats, and cheese, all of those products which are most often recalled. It's not because freeze-drying kills parasites or bacteria, but when you buy from reputable commercial freeze dryers, they're keeping records. So if the cheese that they bought and freeze-dried and sold to you is recalled, they know which packages contain that cheese, and more often than not, who may have purchased it. If that person is keeping a rotating stock in their pantry, they've got a built-in buffer zone. Most likely years and years of buffers where they have time to find the affected product, get a refund, and dispose of it properly before even coming close to consuming it. But like I said, you need to make sure that you're purchasing from reputable companies who are going to be around for a while and do record keeping. I've got a few of my trusted sources here on this website, and I've got them linked in the description box below. And to go along with that, don't depend on one form of food. Keep canned, frozen, freeze-dried, and shelf-stable alternatives. Grow a few things if you can. Even if it's just lettuce, herbs, and green onions in containers, it can give you another option. Shorten the supply chain when it makes sense. Buy from local farmers and producers that you can actually talk to. Purchase directly from manufacturers when that creates better information and accountability. And start looking past the brand name on the package. Who owns it? Who made it? Where would you go if something went wrong? You can't control every step, and most of us never will, but every part of the supply chain that you understand gives you a little more control than you had before. Guys, I don't think that we need to become terrified of our food. I don't think that everything at the grocery store is contaminated, but I do think that we just need to stop treating the food system as though it's incapable of failing. It is made up of farms, factories, equipment, water systems, ingredient suppliers, processing facilities, warehouses, retailers, restaurants, government agencies, and human beings. Mistakes happen, contamination happens, communication breaks down, and testing takes time. And because production is so centralized, one mistake can affect millions of products sold under several different names. This is why we prepare. This is why we look out for each other, not because we believe the world is ending every 5 minutes and not because we need to be afraid of everything we eat. We prepare because no system deserves 100% blind trust. We pay attention. We keep alternatives. We learn where our food and our household products actually come from. We support our health before an emergency. And when something goes wrong, we don't want to be at the mercy of the government agency. We want information. We want options, and we want a little more control over what comes into our homes and what goes into our bodies. If this video was helpful, hit the like button. It helps YouTube show this information to more people, and it helps me know if these types of videos are useful to you guys. Subscribe if you haven't already. I put out a new video every Sunday morning and as often as I can every Thursday as well. And I really want to hear what you think down in the comments. Have all these recalls changed anything that you're buying? Do you trust the food system more, less, or about the same as you did 5 years ago? And have you ever looked into who actually manufactures most of the foods inside your home? I read every comment, every single one, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. If you watched all the way to the end, leave me a magnifying glass emoji in the comments because we all need to do a little investigation to figure out who actually made our dinner. If you haven't had a chance to watch my video where I first talked about the cyclospora outbreak, I'm going to leave that right here for you. And if you have already watched that one, I'm going to leave another video right here that you might find interesting. I'm Jera with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.